Hello and welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast. Now, my next guest has a diverse sales background and understands customers' experiences across many sectors. In 2010, she created the award-winning Growth Framework, which equips small businesses with the skills to convert and retain clients. Please welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast, Karen Dunne-Squires.
Hello, Janice. It's really lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, it's great to have you here. I know that, our paths have crossed quite a few times, kind of sharing stages and things in the sales environment. So I've been meaning to get you on to the show for a while now. But, we are in unprecedented times. So given the unique challenges that we're all experiencing, what advice would you give sellers that must ride out this pandemic?
Well, it's a great question, and it's one that I'm asked every day, Janice. You and I obviously are speaking with businesses about the methods by which they win new customers every day, and those methods have needed review and revision in the last few weeks. It's absolutely true. There's two things that I always suggest sellers should be thinking about that have become even more relevant today. And that's the idea of how do we add value to our target market and how do we solve the problems that our target market are struggling with. Now, those problems may have changed and the way that we add the value that we need to add may have changed. So we need to be in constant contact with our target market, with our prospects, with our customers, understanding what's been the impact of this pandemic and how do we need to adapt and flex so that we can continue to present value and solve their problems. So we're just asking for constant, great quality communication and connection with customers, I think. How are you finding it?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true. Communication is the key, and kind of even just checking in with people, because you don't know really what's going on the other side. I was sharing some clients I'm working with, and their business has been completely decimated. They're kind of airlines and things, and so some people are leaving permanently. Some people are being furloughed. Meanwhile, the people that are there, they're having to do more. So if you have people calling you with things that are not relevant to where you're at in your head at the time, it's really frustrating and can spoil the relationship long term. So I think it's about really communicating, but checking in and asking rather than assuming. Asking where they're at, what's going to be useful, what really does add value, because we don't know. Nobody really knows.
And that's such a great example. Salespeople sometimes, and dear salespeople out there, don't critique me too quickly, sometimes assume the thing that added value last week, last month, my unique selling point, my key criteria for sales, might not be valid anymore. I've got two businesses that I work with that are in exactly the same sector. They sell the same product, they sell it to the same target market, but they do so in different parts of the country. And so we could easily assume that both of those businesses are having the same challenges and the same impact right now. Actually, what's happened is one of those organizations has been really innovative, has pivoted their business in a really, really effective way, and is absolutely booming right now. The other businesses, as you described, decimated. So those two exactly competing businesses need very, very different things from myself and their other suppliers right now. And it's only been through really quality conversations, understanding their need, that we've been able to move to the place of presenting what they want. So, it's never about assumption, is it?
No, absolutely. So do you think that sellers have shifted enough to be customer centric, to be really kind of focused in, zeroing in on what the buyer wants and needs?
I feel as though one of the key challenges for every sales department is that salespeople can very easily fall into this trap of being blinded by their targets, thinking constantly about every activity I'm carrying out. The objective of that is to get closer to my target. The objective is to put a number on the board. The objective is to close a sale. And that can lead our focus away from actually thinking about how well do I know this individual, how deep is my relationship, and how effectively am I meeting their needs. And it's a very experienced salesperson and a very capable salesperson who recognizes that in order to meet the targets, first must come that emotional connection and that relationship build. But it is still lacking in a lot of sales teams that I work with, there's no doubt about it.
That's really interesting, because if you think on a personal level, it's all about, you know, empathy, you know, building up a relationship, not necessarily having ulterior motives. And these are relationships that we have often for a lifetime. But it's funny, as soon as we go into the kind of business mode, that all changes really. And I think this is, you know, you kind of started with this in terms of sales training. Sales training has done a real disservice to the industry of sales. And I remember way back in the 1990s, I was selling in financial services, and you know, like 8 o'clock in the morning, you stand up, you're on the phone, you're doing your cold calling, and it's all about numbers and literally treating people as commodities and numbers, you know, kind of for 100 calls, you get 10 appointments, you might get 1 sale, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
There's, you know, sadly, as you say, a lot of that still hangs over in the sales industry. So what do you do to override that kind of almost mindset that this is what sales is?
It's a great question, Janice, and it's something that I'm trying to overcome all day, every day. And I think there's 2 parts to it. Number one, we really need to encourage people to start treating their business relationships in the same way they would their personal relationships. When we're looking to invest in another human being, we want to nurture that relationship and we want to invest time in it. So that's the first piece that we try to address in terms of mindset. And the second thing, which is interesting that you touched upon, we try to shift the whole idea of what sales training actually is. I do a lot of speaking on the subject of sack the sales trainer, and for a business that delivers sales training, that's often seen as a bit ironic, but actually I believe that sales training shouldn't be about teaching a set of activities and techniques that encourage a team to achieve a number. Sales training should be about getting a team of salespeople to recognize what is the best quality customer experience that we want our clients to have. What is the way that we want to lead our customers through a journey that makes them feel like they're engaging with a credible business, that makes them feel recognized, that makes them feel listened to. When we've understood what that journey is, we then teach the team how to implement that journey to the highest possible standards. So we're not talking about transactional number chasing. We're talking about creating an emotional connection with a customer through a series of interactions. And that's when you get the kind of relationship that you really need.
So tell me more about the journey, you know, creating or mapping the journey, because that seems that it's quite key that you leverage from.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. You know, before we start talking about delivering skills to any sales professional, we always ask the business first to recognize what customer experience do you want this team to deliver. And we like them to map 3 stages. So we ask a business to talk about what are your strategies, approaches and practices around lead generation. How are you generating awareness? How are you generating interest? What activities do you have in place at that stage? We then ask them to move on to looking at lead nurture. So once you've generated an inquiry into your business, what are the processes and practices you have in place to convert that inquiry into a confirmed order? And then the third area we ask them to look at is once you've won that piece of business, What account management strategies do you have in place? How are you engaging with your existing customers to ensure their satisfaction, their repeat business, and their referral business? And if a business has defined that end-to-end journey, we can then work with them on how they implement that journey and make sure it's consistently happening across their entire sales team. And that's what we use as a bedrock of all of our training, really.
So this is the journey that the customer, the buyer, goes through in the interaction with the seller, the sales,
Exactly.
and really understanding that. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
We ask the business to think about it from the customer's perspective. Often when businesses are creating processes, or they're creating the set of communications they want their sales teams to take part in, they plan that from an internal perspective. And what we want them to do is think about, how would you like your customer to feel when they engage with your business? What experience would you like them to have when they come across your product or service? What opinions would you like them to form? And when you think about it from that perspective, you're asking a salesperson to be very customer led, and that's where you get those really good quality relationships.
I think it's very difficult for anybody, really, whether you're a business owner, a salesperson, to really get in the head of your customer, you know, because the natural thing is always to revert back to from their perspective. And so there's something that I used, well, I still do every now and then, you know, is actually, when I worked more with smaller businesses, I used to get them to be a customer for a competitor. You know, because the thing is, we always have blind spots, don't we? We think, oh, our processes are brilliant, you know,
Yeah.
because we've designed them, we understand it because we're in our own heads and it's from our perspective. But
Yeah.
actually, you're very critical of other people, aren't you? We naturally are. So, you know, I don't know, if it was a spa business and you went there, everything you're going to critique. But actually, it's what your business is doing. And actually,
Yeah.
being a customer is when you're really in a customer's head. That's really difficult to be a customer when you're in the business head. You know, yeah. So, and it's critical, isn't it? Seeing things from your customer's perspective.
It is, but you're so right. You know, when I talk to my customers, I'm always very, you know, fair, that I recognise that actually it's much easier to be ourselves than it is to walk in someone else's shoes. And you know, I'll often listen to really high performing sales individuals who feel like they've really got, you know, got the techniques nailed. And I'll listen to them in a sales interaction, and afterwards I'll ask them questions around, what do you think keeps that prospect awake at night? How do you think that prospect felt about you? What 3 words do you think that individual would use to describe you? And you go, I don't know. Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, I've never thought about that. And that's when you're really trying to say, you may have had a very good quality professional interaction, but did you actually really engage with them and get under the skin of them? And do you feel like you know them? That's a different level, isn't it? It's another stage.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, one thing that I do from a kind of social selling point of view is actually helping people to listen in on their customers, you know, using, and that's the beauty of social platforms. You can really kind of get a lot closer to people by really looking at and following their social platforms.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely.
So, you know, what is one practical strategy you would offer listeners to enable them to scale their sales?
Well, that's the
I know
all-consuming.
I'm going to let you only have one. Sorry, I know you've got loads.
Of course, no, I absolutely appreciate that. You know, for me, the creation of a really high quality customer journey is absolutely fundamental. You know, when people are creating their sales plans, when they're thinking about their sales activities and communication, I'm always asking them to step back and say, what information do you want your customer to receive from you? What information do you need to capture from them? What experience and journey end to end, from the moment they very first hear about your business to the moment that they are a loyal customer, what level of communication and level of experience should they have? If your customer journey is of high quality and your sales team implement that really effectively, you're just going to have a bunch of fans who know what you do and love what you do, and that's the bedrock for any great business, isn't it?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So let's change it up a bit and talk about your view on diversity in the B2B sales industry. You know, do you feel that it's progressed because you're a woman that's been in sales for a long time, and you know, so you've seen a lot, and also you've mentored a lot of men, so you can see it from their perspective along with women. So
Yeah.
what's your view?
Well, Janice, the reality is that every sales floor I walk into is still male dominated. That's a fact. You know, I've worked with over 400 businesses in the time since I established Elation, and I very honestly couldn't name one of them that was a female dominated sales environment. And I talk about this a lot. Clients come to me to ask me, please, can you help us to recruit a more diverse team? And I think there's a couple of things around it. I mean, the reputation that sales has, it leans itself to a male environment. We're constantly talking about being aggressive, go-getting, you know, killer attitudes, and that type of language is just more appealing to the male gender. Whether we like that or not, we could debate for hours, but it tends to be. And also the recruitment practices. If a male recruiter and a male manager are recruiting for a role, they will be likely to attract like versus like. So I think that there are some key reasons why we see more men in a sales environment, but I see women succeeding with an equal amount of success as men. So in those environments where women are there and they're thriving, there's no difference in results. So we hope to see a shift, but only time sees those shifts, I guess.
Yeah, but it's very slow. So what would you suggest? Because you do have many companies coming out to you and say, we want a more diverse sales workforce. So what are the things that you say that they need to do?
Well, I mean, interestingly, one of the most powerful pieces of work I've done is to work with a business on changing their job description and their job advertisements. We did what we called an A/B split test, where we did a 50-50 test on a piece of recruitment. And we wrote a job advert in their traditional language, using this killer attitude, go-getter, results-focused, proven-driven type language. And we also wrote a much more customer-focused job advertisement for the same role, same salary, same job title, but the language in that job description was around seeking an individual who will invest time in getting to know our clients, who will invest time in identifying needs, who will be prepared to build long-term relationships, who will be prepared to engage at volume with a number of diverse clients and seek to develop a better understanding of their needs. And lo and behold, no surprise, we had 10% female applications for the first example and over 50% female applications for the second example. Same job, same company, same job title, same salary. So we know that actually, if we put an emphasis on that nurturing, relationship building side of the role, we attract more women. And that's actually what we need in the sector. So we should be doing that consistently, I think, at recruitment phase.
That's a really interesting example, and something, you know, I can absolutely relate to. So tell me a bit more about you in terms of, if you were on a desert island on your own, what would the one thing you would take with you?
Well, Janice, you and I have already talked about this, so you do know I am absolutely obsessed with music. I think that there is a song that will fit every single mood. If you need to be motivated, if you need to be healed or soothed or excited or enthused, there's a song for every moment. So I absolutely couldn't deal with that level of isolation and perhaps starvation in some instances without there being some music that would change my mood. So I would have to take some form of iPod or music player to soothe my time in that space, for sure.
So you must be playing a lot of music now.
Oh, all the time, all the time. And I have a couple of go-to songs that I know if I'm losing my focus, I'm losing my motivation, or I'm feeling like I'm not being the best possible me, I can put on and it'll crank me up and it'll make me feel joyful. So it's important.
Brilliant. So how can people get hold of you, Karen?
Well, Janice, the place that I'm most active is on LinkedIn. So come and find me, Karen Dunne-Squires on LinkedIn, and there you'll see me posting regularly with links to our YouTube site at Elation Experts, which gives you content, commentary, and connection throughout the sales environment. So that's where I'd love to meet new contacts.
Excellent. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast, Karen Dunne-Squires.
Thanks, Janice. All the best to you and your audience.